All right, I'll tell you the next time I see you. You are tuned in to the February 5th meeting of the Community Environment, Culture Affairs, and Economic Development Committee meeting in the heart of Brooklyn, New York. We have two sets of presenters tonight, and the first set is Sally Bowman, a Ditmas Park resident. And I didn't get the name of you, whoever's with you.
Sam Jackson.
Sam Jackson, and we're going to hear about the Metro Flood Defense, Coastal Resiliency, and Flood Protection locally and beyond. So with that said, take it away and let me know if you need anything like, being able to present your slideshow or something.
Yeah, so we want to present. Should I hit share? I don't actually use WebEx very commonly.
Go right ahead. Everybody here is very patient about WebEx users because it's clunky, but you've got it. And just a little housekeeping, we are live streaming. This meeting is being recorded. It will then be housed on our YouTube channel, which is housed on our website. So it will be an ongoing resource. Thank you.
And please like us. Okay.
Okay, so it's wanting me to screen record. Is that correct, you guys?
I haven't seen it from that end, but
I'm on a Mac.
Yeah, that's the typical permission you need to give it. You may need to allow it in settings and then restart WebEx and rejoin.
Oh boy. Okay. So let me just start this.
Thanks, Liz.
So let's see, I'm allowing it. Okay, I'm gonna do that. So just hold on 1 second, okay?
Of course. Sam, we can't hear you. Are you speaking?
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're good now.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Sam Jackson. I am not a Flatbush resident, although I visit Sally frequently in Ditmas Park, and I live down at the end of Flatbush Avenue and over the bridge in Rockaway. So we've got a whole other set of flooding issues in Rockaway, although there are also areas of Rockaway that suffer in intense rainfall, believe it or not.
Yeah, we talk about it a little bit, Sam, the difference between, coastal flooding, which gets a lot of attention and gets a lot of funding. And then I read somewhere, and I won't be specific about parroting this, but that inland flooding incidents are, far greater in New York City than by some number or percentage or something than coastal flooding. So we're really glad to have you here to, with your perspectives and expertise on both.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. And we'll talk about it in our presentation a bit, but there's an overlap, all of the different types of flooding risks that we deal with in New York. If there's a storm surge event, it can affect you, even in Flatbush.
And it does. Sally, we're seeing your screen. Cool.
All right.
And Sally, since we can now see your screen, we can't see you. So if you're speaking, we're not hearing you. Make sure you're unmuted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Can you still see my screen though?
Yep.
I'm going to try this again. When I go to slideshow, hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So thank you guys so much for having us. Sorry, I had to drop off for a second. As Sean and Joel had said, my name is Sally Bowman, and I live here in Flatbush and Ditmas. I've been here for, almost 24 years now. And I've been very involved in the community in numerous ways. I actually was the deputy director of the Flatbush Development Corp, FDC, for a long time. I sent my children to local PS 139. So I've been really involved in the community for a long time. I'm now the co-founder with my partner here, Sam Jackson, of Metro Flood Defense, and we are a nonprofit. This is our mission. So as you guys can see, it's to promote the preservation, protection, and safety of the greater New York City metropolitan regional area and all of its residents.
Sally, I'm sorry to interrupt. It may just be me, but I'm not seeing the presentation.
Yeah, it's
You're
not
not?
you. We're getting it says
Yeah,
click
it
to
says
exit full
click
screen.
to A. Yeah.
When
You
you weren't
guys-
full,
So you may have to share the other window, another window.
A different window?
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
now we
Yeah.
can see it, but when you go to full screen,
Okay, but
yeah,
so can
keep
you
it
guys
there.
maybe you can
just
try it again from the beginning at full screen. I'm not sure if it'll.
I'm worried if I do full
Or
screen that
you
it's
may
gonna
just have to choose a different sharing.
Now we can see it and we're on our mission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So should I just
We can
leave
do
it
it
as
this
it is?
Yeah,
leave it
that's
as it is.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I don't want to take too much time.
And
So-
we'll share the presentation with everyone after the meeting.
Yeah. So
Yes.
thank you guys. Sorry about these technical difficulties. Yeah. So we really champion science-based solutions and we provide support and resources to residents in the community. And I came to this work, I've obviously, as many of you know, I've always been interested in community development work, but my background in this area goes back pretty much my whole life. My father's a physical oceanographer and has always been very involved in this space. And starting in the mid to late 90s, I became involved attending conferences, editing science-based documents, being involved in policy and advocacy in this area since then. So Sam and I met around 2017, and we decided to champion this and move it forward. And I'll just let Sam introduce him.
Sure. So I had a chance to say hello briefly. Mentioned I live down in Rockaway. I lived in all over North Brooklyn for about 10 years before heading out there. I've been working in the coastal resilience nonprofit space since Sally and I met back in 2017. I also teach sailing and teach environmental issues out on Jamaica Bay with Sail Rockaway, and very plugged in with the community down there. Where, as I mentioned, we have a lot of concerns with all three types of flooding we deal with in New York. And so Metro Flood Defense was founded in 2022, and we spend a lot of our time meeting with elected officials and stakeholders and key decision makers, and disseminating the expertise of the oceanographers and city planners and engineers that we work with. We also do that with community members, and we particularly enjoy going in and meeting with students, which we've got some fun programming coming up with some New York City high school students. But that's really our purpose. We're focused on the New York City region and all of the different things that need to happen on a local level and a regional level to protect everyone from future storms.
So Sam and I, not only do we head up Metro Flood Defense, but we're very active in many different committees, coalitions, and working groups. So of note, the Metro New York, New Jersey Storm Surge Working Group is a group of oceanographers, ecologists, engineers, urban planners, architects, advocates, social scientists, who are all dedicated to the same premise, which is the protection of New York, New Jersey, the entire metropolitan region against catastrophic flooding. from storm surge and sea level. And so we've been very involved with them for many years. Both of us were members of that before we started Metro Flood Defense, and we still rely on them for their areas of expertise. And they really are quite an impressive group. We can share their website later if people would like to explore what they do. We are both inaugural members. We were invited by the City Club of New York to be members of their waterfront committee. We recently put out a call for a moratorium on waterfront development. While some of these efforts are being worked out, we're involved in many other things. We are also involved heavily in the Waterfront Alliance Rise to Resiliency Coalition, and then, of course, Rainproof New York. And an outshoot of that is Rainproof Flatbush, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in our talk. And it's a community-scaled rainproof neighborhood planning initiative. And we're looking at East Flatbush, Prospect Lefferts, Wingate, Erasmus, Ditmas Park, and Prospect Avenue South area. So, Sam, do you want to keep going?
Sure. One slide back, I think. Yeah. So there's two types of flooding, as we mentioned briefly while Sally was joining, that we deal with. Inland flooding from intense rainfall, as I believe one of the committee members mentioned earlier. That's something that, especially in the past 5 years, we've had a drastic increase. I don't have to tell any of you that. I know that you're familiar with that. And we also deal with coastal flooding, which we saw in Sandy. And there are many communities, particularly around Jamaica Bay, where I live, that even on a nice sunny day, if it's a full moon, high tide, the streets are flooded with salt water. So there's some big concerns there. You can go to the next slide. So the three causes of flooding that are intense rainfall, sea level rise, storm surge, all very different. All are going to require decades of work, billions and billions of dollars to deal with. And it's really important to understand how those three are related and how the different systems that we need to implement to protect those need to dovetail with each other. So this is a slide that shows the combination of sea level rise and storm surge and how that manifests during a storm event. So Sandy in the Battery at the southern tip of Manhattan, I believe was a 9-foot surge, and you can imagine if there were 2 or 3 feet of sea level rise. Now all of a sudden that 9-foot surge becomes a 12-foot surge, and that makes a really, really big difference in flooding. So sea level rise and storm surge, particularly right now, none of the projections for sea level rise are good. So Sally, you can go to the next slide. We're going to see multiple feet of sea level rise in the next 100 years. Is at the low level. It's important to note that there's a lot of uncertainty with sea level rise, and that makes planning infrastructure really, really difficult when we're thinking long term.
And if you look at this chart, you can see the 25th and 75th percentile. So obviously this is sort of the median. So if you don't want to be very conservative or very extreme, in the middle there is really the numbers we're going to see. And even the 2030s, which is 5 years from now, it's going to be 7 to 11 inches. So it's quite significant, and it's coming quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, a lot of communities are already seeing the effects, and there's not a lot of easy solutions there. So we spoke a bit about this earlier. This is a slide that shows how storm surge could exacerbate the consequences of a intense rainfall event. So Superstorm Sandy in 2012, massive storm surge. Ida in 2021, unprecedented amounts of rainfall. we're lucky that there was not a surge during Ida and there was very limited rainfall during Sandy. But it's very possible that the New York City area could experience a storm that combines intense rainfall with a storm surge as that storm is moving into the area. So this image shows a combined sewer outflow that's going out to the harbor. In a storm surge event, that outflow is underwater, and so that means that the sewers are backing up and coming into your neighborhood. We'll talk about this a little bit later, and I would encourage you not to judge the way that any sort of a Seagate system or a way to keep the water out of the harbor would look based on this diagram, which is just a wall. But the important thing here is that if there's no way to keep the storm surge out of the harbor, if there's a storm event that combines intense storm surge and rainfall, and then you can add sea level rise on top of that and get the whole trifecta, you can imagine a scenario where there would be, the sewer systems would be completely overwhelmed, and that could happen on a citywide level. And neighborhoods like Flatbush that are already experiencing overwhelmed sewer systems, that could be a really catastrophic event.
So something that is a really helpful resource, and again, Sam and I are going to send these slides, and there's live links in the deck so that you guys, if any of you are interested in learning more, you can go ahead and do so. But the New York State Climate Impacts Assessment is something that was recently done, and it's the New York State Energy and Development Authority put it together, and they got more than 250 organizations, climate scientists and experts, community members across industries and across the state to contribute to this assessment. And this is all peer-reviewed science-based analysis of what to expect from climate risk in New York State. So what we pulled out tonight for you guys was what's likely to happen with precipitation. And of course, that where we are here in Flatbush, we experience the inland flooding, which is often driven by or exacerbated by heavy rains. So the takeaway here is that the total annual precipitation is projected to increase between 4 and 11% by the 2050s, and between 7 and 17% by the 2080s. And so this could increasingly come from heavy storms, which can lead to flooding, which of course we've seen, recently in our area, and also high stream flow. It's important, something that's not on this that I want you guys to all think about too, is it's important to think about in our area and across New York City. One of the issues as well is that this obviously used to be open land, farmland. There were rivers and streams, and many of these were covered over. And those are natural places for water to run. So for instance, under Church Avenue, under a lot of the stores that are there under those buildings, there's a covered over stream. And so a lot of those merchants in that area experience flooding in their basements. And so it's not only the rain coming down, it's the water table coming up with those streams that have been covered over. So it's important to think about. So I'll let you, you can let you look at these. I want to kind of move through this because I'm sensitive to time. So what does it mean for New York? So it means, as we know, flooding's a top concern for coastal adjacent communities, which means basically all of New York. We are on an island. We are coastal adjacent. We're going to get more precipitation, higher humidity levels. We're going to have less snowfall, but more rain. We're going to have increased extreme precipitation events. Again, this is exacerbated. Flatbush, especially East Flatbush, is an area that creates heat islands, and heat islands lead to cloudburst events, which are what we call those really strong precipitation events where the rain kind of comes and sits for a little while and leaves. So we're going to see more of that. And what are the impacts and adaptation needs then? What does it mean for our community? Well, our aging stormwater systems are going to be taxed and overwhelmed. There's going to be increased disruption to our mass transit and our tunnels. There's going to be costly flood damage. These are things we're already seeing, but it's going to just increase. We have real need for improved stormwater systems and infrastructure adaptation strategies, and we have to think about buildings and structural material changes. And I know that's something that has been discussed a little bit at the community board, but probably needs to be discussed more. So what does this mean for Flatbush, for item beyond? So this map, and when we send you guys the slides, this is a map of our area. And, here's the Prospect Park. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Here's the parade grounds. Right here, we have Church Avenue, we have Cortelyou Road. So the thing is that this map was created based on sea level rise projections for 2080. And what I want to point out is, so for instance, right here, this is Beverly and Marlboro. This is showing flooding for 2080. Well, both Ida and in the extreme rain event that happened more recently, this area completely flooded now. So we're talking, this has already historically happened, though this map is telling us it's 2080. I can only imagine what it will actually be like in 2080. As I think, Sean, you were saying when I came back on the call, Flatbush is one of the 20 most flood prone areas in New York City. However, we are outside of FEMA's 100-year flood zone. So there are new rules coming into effect for Brooklyn residents around flood insurance. However, as we are outside the 100-year flood zone, we are not under those mandates. However, if you don't have flood insurance, you probably won't get your flood damage covered. And as we all know, we're having flood damage. So this is a real problem. So what are we doing about it? Beside the more general work that Sam and I do, New York City together, the city, Rebuild by Design, other organizations, the DEP got together and created something called Rainproof New York. And it was a year-long cohort of organizations and people across the city that came together to come up with ideas and planning of how to deal with this. At the big day-long kickoff event, which actually was the same day that you guys voted on the City of Yes and the zoning, all day I was at that kickoff event, and a few of us realized, we recognized each other, that we all live in Flatbush. And so we started this neighborhood planning initiative addressing the stormwater flooding here in Flatbush, concentrating on our neighborhoods here. Sorry, let me just clap that out. So some of the things that we're doing, we're developing an interactive flood map, which will be digital and hard copy. It will capture oral and written stories related to flood impacts. We're taking available data sets that we have, for instance, the 311 calling complaints, the FloodNet flood sensors that are being put around the city, including in Flatbush, and lots of other sort of data. We're compiling it all together, and we're going to use these stories and resources and data collection. And it's going to be dynamic and changing to inform education, advocacy, policy development, and change within the neighborhood. And we're hoping to pilot this and then bring it to other neighborhoods throughout the city. So again, to reiterate, and I don't think it's a surprise to any of us here, many of us have already been impacted seriously by the flooding. Flatbush is identified as one of New York City's most flood-prone areas. We obviously know already, we've talked about it, the sea level rise, the extreme rainfall. We were identified as a neighborhood with the most concentrated 311 flooding complaints in the city after the September 29th, 2023 flash flood. And East Flatbush is ranked #1 for the most heat vulnerable and underserved neighborhood with the fewest number of cooling centers, which again, I already spoke to how heat and rainfall coalesce together to create these, disasters that we've had. So why does it matter? Our demographics, the housing dynamics here, the economic landscape, they're compounded with the fact that it's being underdocumented. And so what we're looking to try to do is document that and put it forward. I am currently leading this coalition along with my colleagues from the Environmental Defense Fund, CUP, which is the Center for Urban Pedagogy. The executive director is part of it. The executive director of Central and Southeast Brooklyn Community Development Court is a part of it, and Rebuild by Design. So those are the folks that are involved in this effort. At the end, I'll sort of cycle back about how we'd like to continue our work with you guys. Sam?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we work closely with a network of engineers, oceanographers, city planners, architects, people that have been working on flooding infrastructure and other infrastructure projects in the New York City area for a really long time and have a lot to contribute. And with experts from the Storm Surge Working Group, last year we published a comprehensive layered approach that addresses all of the types of floodings that we deal with in New York, and we'll get into those specific layers. But the main point about the layered defense strategy, and something that's really important for you all to consider, is that these three different types of flooding, there's different agencies and entities that need to take the lead on that. So when it comes to rainfall, when it comes to local initiatives in your area, you don't want to be looking to the Army Corps to solve those problems as the main entity doing it. When it comes to storm surge, which is, after Sandy, and we'll get into this a little bit more, the Army Corps was tasked with coming up with a plan to protect us from the next Sandy. Storm surge is totally Army Corps responsibility, and with sea level rise, both need to be involved, the Army Corps as well as local entities.
So again, just I know we don't have very much time, so I'm going to look at this very quickly. We're going to send this to you guys. These are all live links. There are a lot of state and local efforts on rainfall since Ida. That has become a big focus, which is super important. As Sam mentioned earlier in the presentation, we have these three types of flooding, but because of our combined sewer system, they really are very, very connected. So each of these, the Cloudburst is a DEP program, Plan NYC, there's information about the sewer upgrades, the New York Atlas of Disaster and the New York Atlas of Accountability, which is put out by one of the nonprofits we work with. So all of these are really interesting things to look into. I invite you to kind of click and examine around. If you'd like, we can always come back and talk about those in more depth in the future, but there is a lot going on. However, we found that, with Sandy, all the focus was on storm surge. Then when Ida came, most of the focus has now moved to extreme precipitation. As Sam pointed out, both can happen together. And also, we just have to be careful for this pendulum swing. However, we recognize, and, as a Flatbush resident, I recognize that these rainfall efforts are incredibly important in our community. So I wanted to, have these links in there for you guys to learn more.
So I mentioned this briefly already, but after Superstorm Sandy, the Army Corps of Engineers was tasked with protecting us from the next Sandy. They developed a plan. It's been more than 12 years. Where we sit with it now is they've come up with a tentatively selected plan. And for anyone that's interested, Sally and I could, go on for a long time. We've been heavily involved with the critiquing of the Army Corps on this plan, as have many organizations. The important thing to know is that it's been largely rejected by pretty much every community group, except for, I believe, the Broad Channel Homeowners Association is the only organization that has really endorsed the Corps' plan as far as local groups go. The Army Corps is still in the study portion of this plan, so we're a very long way off from any major storm surge infrastructure projects being implemented, or for the plan in this study from being completed. So things are moving very slowly on that front.
Yeah, and it is just important to note that this tentatively selected plan only protects 63% of the study area, where there are other options, and the layered plan that we have will protect up to 95% of the study area. And so that's really, really important, especially as we talk about environmental justice and equity in terms of these issues.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Sally. So our solution has 4 principal layers that are meant to represent the different types of flooding. We're of the understanding that if the goal is to protect New Yorkers from the next Sandy and Ida, then we need all 4 of these layers. All 4 of these layers need massive investment, and we need to get going today on the local projects that we can do. So when it comes to extreme rainfall strategies, there's lots of amazing opportunities that you can do locally, and the regional storm surge protections that the oceanographers and engineers we work with believe are the only way to protect the region from storm surge, they are not happening anytime soon. There's a lot more research that needs to be done to figure out a way to do it that would not have damaging effects to the Hudson River estuary, and that could be done economically and quickly. So the main thing here is that we need to be working on systems for all of these different types of flooding. These systems need to work together, and for the things that we can start on now, we need to get started on now. And there are, there's a lot of things already happening, and anything we can do to increase a sense of urgency there is good.
So if you look at layer 1 extreme rainfall strategies, it says a network of detention basins, swales, green roofs, etc., upsize a storm water drainage system. So these are things obviously that you guys know about. These are some images of what that can look like. The city's cloudburst program through DEP is doing pilot projects. There are none in our area, but they are doing some, which are including retention basins under fields. So you can see this is a running field in a school. Under the grass here is a retention basin. Another popular option is basketball courts, having them sunken down. So it has seating around the edge, but that seating is actually also a pool to collect water runoff during extreme rainfall events. And then we talk about green and gray infrastructure, and I'm just going to quickly go through this. But when people are talking about that, examples of green infrastructure are green roofs, oyster beds, coastal wetlands, rain gardens. It's important to note these are incredibly helpful in mitigating, but they are not alone. They cannot protect the region from flooding. And there's also, the concept of living with water. And so it's really important, and part of the communication effort with community members that we found. I know Hoboken, where some of I lived part-time for the last 17 years, struggles with this daily. I was talking to Caleb, who's in charge of the process over there, the other day, and he was saying, there's still such a problem with people understanding that even with these things, there will be flooding. It will just be a lot less, and it will be cleaned out a lot more quickly. And then, of course, the gray infrastructure are things like extending New York City's sewer drainage systems, offshore, gates that are open almost all the time but can close to prevent flooding. The River Thames in London has had one for 30 or 40 years. Many Londonites don't even know that it's there, but it saves them from flooding very frequently. So in terms of what we're doing with Metro Flood Defense and with a Rainproof Flatbush, we're really engaging frontline communities. And we want to work with, and we do work with, local government entities to sort of do planning and addressing these long-term issues. And then also prioritizing people over property values. And this is something, we have to foster equity in the cost benefit analysis. And this again goes beyond the scope of our conversation tonight. But as Sam talked about the HAT study in the Army Corps, they're charged and constrained by the rules that they must follow in their study. And their cost benefit analysis can only take into account the cost of replacing existing infrastructure in its current condition. So what that means is projections for cost benefit analysis are often very skewed. People that don't understand that don't understand how much things really will cost to fix, that when they're fixed, they only have the money to fix them back to whatever condition they were in beforehand. And in a city like New York with a lot of aging infrastructure, that often is not great condition, and it places no value for individual properties, loss of human life, community properties, things like schools, libraries, that sort of thing. So we really, want to work on increasing people's understanding of all of these things. So thank you guys. I know I'm speaking quickly, but wanted to just make sure that we got through this because we know you have other speakers. And if we have a moment, I don't know, Sean, you'll let us know, but if we have a moment, I am curious about where Community Board 14 sort of would like to fit into this with some of our work that we're doing and with Rainproof Flatbush to find out, if we can partner, present to the community or whatever that might look like.
We also, Sally, want to probably open the floor to some questions from the people here at the meeting. But Sean, you want to answer that?
Well, I not off the top, Sally, because I think that's to be determined through the committee and the board, and so I don't want to speak for them. But I think you've provided a lot to consider, and in order to answer that question as a group of community members. Glenn has had a hand up for a while, and Liz has a hand up as well.
Let me just say one thing. First of all, it was a fine presentation and incredibly sobering. I'm assuming there's some sort of national clearinghouse of strategies and techniques. Because I think of my beloved New Orleans. I mean, they certainly tried to figure things out down there. We're not alone in this, no?
Definitely not. And there is collaboration. We've met with folks from New Orleans and as far away as London, and London and the Netherlands are really leaders in this space. But we also work closely with folks in Boston, which is dealing with all the same stuff, and as well as Texas. So there is collaboration. I think it would be great if there was more, and it was more formalized. But the lines of communication are definitely open. So that's a great point.
Sean, who did you say? What were the orders of hands?
Glenn, Liz.
Okay, go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. A little scary. I can't address global warming issues because they're much too big and uncertain at this time. But the local issue of flooding was addressed last March, I believe it was, that we were told that they were going to start early this year putting in the permeable concrete by the curbs. And based on the question I asked, how many gallons of water that would hold, they're estimating 2.6 million gallons to be absorbed into the ground. So that, I'm wondering if you're aware of this, and is this still scheduled to be happening?
So, yeah. Hi, Glenn. How are you? So there's a few things about that. Permeable pavement is an existing technology. It is used around the world. We have an issue with it in New York. In New York, we are I guess I brought up that I was at the Rainproof New York event and then at this Community Board 14 vote for the city of yes, the zoning. The agencies in New York are not talking to each other. They're not working together. This is a huge issue in New York. And with our Waterfront Alliance Rise to Resiliency, actually, we're putting we're supporting a Climate Resilient New York Act, which establishes an Office of Resiliency and a Chief Resilience Officer to coordinate the stuff in New York. But Glenn, to your issue about the permeable pavement, the issue is New York City, no agency is tasked with maintaining it. And that we do not, the city of New York does not own a single truck that is required to properly maintain and clean it. So this is the issue. It's coming in. However, we're not at a place where we can properly maintain it. So what does that mean? I know that some rain gardens around the city that have been put in are already falling flat. I do know that there's work. Some of our partners in our Waterfront Alliance are nonprofits that are focused on workforce development. That's an area they want to look at, about doing job training, bringing in some of these. I don't even want to call them green jobs. I don't even want to call them that, because this is flooding. This is something that has to happen. So to me, this is something that's very concrete, but they're looking at how can we bring that in? How can we train people to clean it? What can we do so that those rain gardens are effective, the permeable pavements effective? Last week in Gowanus, there was a flood fair, which was really amazing. I mean, I'd love to see something like that here in Flatbush. It was a combination of speakers. So there were electeds, Bobby was there, Brett Landers folks were there. A lot of the big nonprofits in the space are partners we work with, but they also had vendors. So there was a permeable pavement vendor who has a big contract with the city. And it was interesting. I was talking to him about it. And I said, okay, well, how do you clean this? And he said, well, you power wash it, but you have to do it every 3 to 6 months. And I said, okay, well, what about if the leaf debris breaks down and gets into it and it's not being cleaned? And he's like, well, I don't really know. We put it in, we don't maintain it. So I want to put that out there. I think it's a great technology. It's being used internationally. We just have a little bit of a problem here because people are voting for it, are saying, I know at Community Board 14 with City of Yes, that was one of the discussions. Well, if the permeable pavement is used and that's required, then we'll allow other building. The issue is the maintenance and the usability over time is going to go down. So that's the sort of, I think it's great technology, but we're not there yet answer.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that there's no silver bullet. There isn't. There needs to be, even for just rainfall, there needs to be layers and layers of solutions. You can't just have the permeable pavement. You also need to increase capacity of the sewer system and build detention basins and a myriad of other things. So I think that the permeable pavement project is fantastic. It's also been used in a neighborhood in Rockaway recently, but it's not going to solve the issue, and that's the most important thing to consider. But I think I think Sally and I both feel we need more projects like this. We're still in the testing phase to figure out in New York. So right now, we don't really know. And then the coordination of maintenance is a major issue for all sorts of different flooding infrastructure, and is a major concern as well.
If I might follow up.
Well, I mean, Liz also has a hand up and our other presenters are here, but I leave it to Joel.
Just quickly, Glenn.
Well, it became clear to me right at the very beginning that dirt could get into the concrete and slow down the absorption. The real question is that what's going to happen? That it'll slow down the absorption as opposed to pretty much cutting it off altogether. So supposedly 11.8 gallons per square foot. Well, maybe in the beginning it'll do that. Now,
Yeah.
even if it takes 5 times as long to accomplish that, will it still do that when it gets dirty, or will it literally not do that? That's the real question in my mind. And I agree with you. This is one small piece, but it's an important piece because they're going to do it.
Yep.
It appears. And
Absolutely.
all the other stuff you say we need, I agree, we need, but it isn't happening yet. So thank you for your advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm all about getting done what can be done when it can, while pushing for more.
Thank you.
We
Really
totally
Thanks.
agree.
Thank
That's
you very
one of the
much.
things that's important about thinking about a layered strategy is just because we're a long way off from accomplishing one layer doesn't mean we can't get started on projects in another layer. So
Thank
that's a
you.
good point.
Liz, did you have a question?
Yeah, hello. I have two questions. One I think will hopefully be quick. Just want to note that this little map here has both on the left has kind of the Community Board 14 survey done by one of our fellows last year and flooding, and on the right was some of the permeable paving they had mentioned, and it does reflect a lot of, I think, very similar looking to your map. You know, I'm happy to share those maps with you. They're also just publicly online. Just would hope that you can also make sure to just reach out directly to DEP with that map, just because I think that there are clearly, you know, looking from your map and comparing to this, clearly a few holes on locations that they're considering priorities for things like permeable paving. Totally hear you that we need to make sure we maintain them. You know, as a board member, I would love to, we could write a resolution or something asking to make sure that we get those resources so that permeable paving continues to work for years to come. I understand it's one of many layers, but just would urge you to share that map with them because they don't have the same kind of data that we've all seen. And I know that Sean has heard from residents for decades before I was even near the community board on flooding in this area. So really appreciate all you do. One other question I kind of just had, like a question I had was, you know, I totally agree that we need lots of layers of defense to flooding. You know, we've learned so much about layers of defense and how it can help projects through COVID and beyond. And absolutely agree that these things are going to work, you know, have to be working together. One thing that I was wondering if you might touch on a little that I know is maybe is a little outside of, you know, the flood response side of things. But, you know, those rainfall projections, there's a range of them. And my understanding of why we think there's a range of them is because we don't know how fast the climate is changing. And that climate changes is the large driver of these, both increased rainfall events and also, you know, increased storm surging and sea levels and so forth. And so I was just wondering, you know, what other things can we as a community board kind of, you know, help affect to reduce climate? You know, I know we can't, we're just one community board in one city, in one country, in the whole world. But, you know, being in New York City, we are kind of in a unique position where, you know, more people can live car free or live in denser housing or so forth. And I was just wondering if there was any, you know, resources or anything that you all had that you could share with us, because those are some of the other things we do discuss on this board, and we can just be as informed as possible in how our decisions and ideas would affect flooding and increased flooding long term. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. So yeah, so we're gonna send, like I said, that one slide that I just went by really, really quickly has all of those links. You're gonna be able to link on that and see some of the stuff that's going on. In terms of hyper local, really greening helps a lot. So with apartment buildings, green roofs, things like that, it is hard because our housing stock is older. It's hard to retrofit buildings with that just because of the sheer weight. However, with newer construction that goes in, I mean, that's something to think about, talking about, you know, and it may be an incentive program to get developers to even be interested, which may be beyond the purview of a community board, but looking at ways to incentivize them to do things like this, because, you know, as we talked about, especially in East Flatbush, these heat islands are a big deal and they exacerbate cloud bursts. So if we can work to mitigate that a little bit, you know, we are the #1 heat island in the city of New York. So
Wow.
that is something to think about. But we'll share those links, and you know, you can go as deep as you'd like. There's a ton of great information in there.
All right.
Sally and Sam, I think we're going to swing back to have
Yeah.
more conversations for sure. Thank you both.
Great. Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks,
Thanks.
Joel. Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
thanks
Thanks.
for having us,
And
everyone.
you're welcome
Is it
to
okay
stick
if we
around.
stay on?
I was going to say you're welcome to stay
Yeah,
on. I
for
think
sure.
you know, Deborah and Christian have been tireless, and we'll have an interesting presentation. But you're also free to go. We do not hold people against their will.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Looking forward to the next presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. So our next guests are from the Prospect Park Alliance. We have Christian Zimmerman and Deborah Kirshner. They're going to talk about Parks capital projects and update us on those projects, including the Lakeshore project. So whoever is going to take the lead, please do so.
Yeah, I mean, I could start, but Sean, I just wanted to be sensitive to the fact that it's getting rather late. I know we only have 10 minutes, and I think
No, Deborah, you don't have 10 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can certainly go until 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Okay, I didn't realize that. For some reason, I thought this ended at 7:30. Okay, great. I had mentioned to Sean today, like when I originally connected with her about presenting to the Parks Committee, it was to give like an overview of all the work that we're doing in the park. We've been doing that with each of the community boards around the park, and I'm happy to do that. If you feel like you'd prefer just to focus on capital project updates, we could do that too. And I can come back a different time just to talk about sort of overall kind of park operations and activities. So your discretion.
Sean, what do you think? The program was directed at capital projects.
Well, I think I had a couple different lines of communication going on with Deborah. If I think we can probably fit it all in if you want to start with capital, because I feel like we have a segue to some of the stuff that Christian's working on, and then back into the other projects and programs. Would that work, Deborah?
Yeah, or else like I'm happy to come back a different time just to give an
Let's see how
overview of
far we
other
get,
work
and then
going.
we're always happy to have you back as often as you're available.
Okay.
So let's see how far we get.
Okay, well, I was gonna share my screen just to share some images to go with Christian's talking. I
Cool.
don't know if I'm allowed to just
Please,
share. Let me
you should
see.
be able to do
Okay.
that without
Okay,
issue.
let me see. And then Christian, the floor is yours.
Great.
Hi, Sean. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Christian.
Nice to be here. It seems like this is the project that has the most interest, although there are a number of projects that you're interested in, but clearly in the previous conversation, this seems to be the highlight. And then I can talk about Field 9 and Shirley Chisholm and all of those if you want to get into it. But so good news, exciting news for.
Oh, I think the connection's not great.
Oh,
Oh.
no.
I
Can you
can
not
hear
hear
you,
me?
Christian.
Hmm?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. So we, as you know, because we presented to you and we've been talking about this for a long time, our focus, one of our primary, probably our most major project right now in Prospect Park is the lakeshore restoration. And it has a huge component tying into flood mitigation, not, trying to stop Prospect Park in any way of flooding the neighborhood, your neighborhoods. And we've received some money. We have phase 1 in design and phase 2 in design, and that's $8 million. But I'll give you a little heads up on that. But we just received this year the approval for $12 million to give us a $20 million project in really reshaping our shoreline and working on flood mitigation. So if you look at the plan, I think you see in one area, you'll see that's phase 1. Phase 2 is, if you look at that drawing, you'll see a thing called a hammerhead. That is phase 2. So that is the area where, as probably many of you know, when we get a huge storm event and we cannot control the lake level, the water spills out and goes down, leaves the park and goes down Coney Island Avenue and floods your neighborhood. So that is phase 2. We're actually designing those two phases together simultaneously. And we'd like to have them go into construction at the same time. They're currently in design. They've been approved by the Design Commission, Landmarks Commission, Parks, everybody, and it's moving forward. We have a little bit of a glitch in the sense of that Parks and the city has decided that they would like us to complete an environmental assessment study, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It just delays the project a little bit more in taking time to get that approved. But while that's going on, we're still doing the contract documents to move forward in reshaping our shoreline in those two areas. The $12 million will work toward the rest of that shoreline. And just to pull back again, remember what we're trying to do here is to stop stop all water from Prospect Park during storm events, whether it's heavy rains, during hurricanes, all kinds of those storm events, from leaving the park in any way and going down Coney Island Avenue, because that's the low point, and flooding your neighborhood. What we'd like to do is, and what we're working toward doing, is capturing all that water on their drives and sending it back to the lake, and using the lake as a containment area and holding it, which it does most of the time. But or whatever, the storm Ophelia, that showed that we were not capable of doing that. In addition to this, we are partnering with, so we partner with the Parks Department. The Alliance is doing the design, we'll oversee the construction. But in addition to this, we have been partnering with DEP. They are studying all of Prospect Park as a watershed and looking at ways that they can help us in reducing that storm flow capacity that winds up going downstream, goes down to lower Brooklyn, and impacts the sewer system, because as you heard previously, it's a combined sewer system. DEP recently paid for a bathymetric survey, which is a survey of our lake bed. Last time we had that done was in 1935. So we have not mapped out what our lake looks like in the pond. So they are studying it. They are looking to figure out a way, if there is a way that they can help reduce our stormwater impacts in the neighborhood and in greater Brooklyn. So it's very exciting. We're working very closely with them. They've seen our plan. We're talking with them. We had their engineering team that they hired. Dewberry is the name of the engineering company. They've been walking along, mapping the subsurface drainage system with our input as well, because we have all the knowledge of the park. So we hand that information to them, and then they're double checking it, and they're creating, these studies, just to try to figure out how much water we can actually hold. I mean, we're looking at a number of different ways, whether we lower the lake for a foot, which is, it's a 60-acre body of water. So if you lower the lake a foot and then we have a storm flow, that's a lot of water that it can hold. So we're analyzing all kinds of things. But more importantly, I mean, short term, we are working right now to design and then go into construction these two first phases, which would reduce minimally but somewhat storm flow into the neighborhood. It's not, because it's a partial, because we can't do the project all at once. We can't take all that property away from the public. So we'd be doing it in a phased system, phased way of construction, but we want to have this kind of an impact. So we're in design now. Probably the way the city works, Sean, you can support me with this. 1 year, and then 1 year procurement, and then we'd go into 1 year of construction. So you're probably talking 2027, we'd go into construction to start this. In the meantime, we are actively monitoring. We've always actively monitored our lake system, but we've turned off our water body. Our waterfall system is currently turned off. We are not feeding it at all. It's just the only water that comes into the system right now would be through rainfall, but the waterfalls aren't functioning. They're just turned off. So we did that because we're also, in addition to this, we're also working on with DEP that they gave us $1.4 million to reconstruct our valve system and controls to be able to turn our water system off during heavy events. So when the Office of Emergency Management says, please lower your lake because we're going to get a heavy rainfall. They usually do that a week to 2 weeks ahead of time. We'll be able to control it much more. So everybody's focused on this. It's not that Prospect Park floods per se, it's just everything below us is impacted. So our roads are impervious, our drainage system that way and on our roads don't function well in this part of the park. So we are reconstructing that, and we want to redirect all that water back into the park as opposed to downstream out Coney Island Avenue. So it's a very exciting project, a lot of interest, and we're moving forward, and we're very focused on this.
Thank you.
So that's that project or projects. It's a $20 million project for us. The next one here is another one you're probably very interested in is Parkside Ocean Avenue perimeter sidewalk restoration, also a bike lane. So that is in procurement, but it's further along in the sense that the contractor has been chosen. And we're just going through registration right now. We're hoping that construction will start this summer. It's a phased project because obviously we can't take that much parking away from the public. So I think the way DOT has it set up, I'm sorry. We only do about 800 feet at a time. And this is a very long project. So we'll be starting that this summer. We will give you an update once we know when the contractor is actually registered, and we will definitely give you a phasing plan. In addition to that, the Shirley Chisholm Monument is in design right now. We're hoping that starts construction as well during the summer. We're waiting with the Department of Cultural Affairs. We are monitoring, or we're the project manager, the team actually shepherding it through when it comes to construction. But it's not a parks project per se, it's a cultural affairs. But that is moving forward, and we'd like to break ground in the summer. We'll also let you know again when that will take place. And we'll give you a timeline. We don't have a timeline yet. The artists haven't quantified that, how long they will think it will take. But when that happens, we will jump to the plaza area and do that installation. Sorry, I'm on my little phone. This is Field 9. I'm sorry, I'm on.
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Okay, Field 9. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. Field 9 is in construction now. They did start. They had to stop. There's some testing that they have to do that the Parks Department is requiring. But if you went out there, you saw that they started to saw cut and remove. Started to cut up the pavement. But that's moving forward, which is great. The weather is, it's winter, but I think starting, in March, they'll be able to go full steam. It's a 1-year project. I don't think it'll take a year because it's a straightforward turf replacement with some new amenities, some paving around for accessibility. I would think they would finish it in the summer, but that's going on. Questions?
Christian, I didn't put other things. If you want to list off the cuff about a few other, we have so much going on in the park right now.
The only other thing, and it's very early on in the stages, we're doing the Shirley Chisholm, well, we called it the Welcome Center. It's a pavilion, and it's the Parkside restroom that's been closed for 30, 40 years. We're in design right now, and that's great. There's so much going on in this end of the park, which is great. So it's not only reconstructing that reconstructing that restroom, but it's also building a new pavilion that is honoring Shirley Chisholm. And we just started working on that. We're in schematic design. It hasn't gone through any approvals yet. It's all internal at this point. We've been going back and forth with the Parks Department's architecture division, kind of just doing the standard process. Nothing unusual in that, but there's so much going on in this area. It's for the next 3-4 years, it's just going to be on fire. Actually, more than that with the Lakeshore project. And if DEP decides to really engage itself, can commit, it's going to be really quite something. So yes, we're facing you. We are taking care of you. We are, we definitely are doing a lot of work from Wellhouse Drive to Parkside Avenue. We are definitely focused in this area. It's very exciting, very interesting stuff too.
Deborah, did you want to tell us about some other things?
Yeah, it's
Or do
completely
you-
up to you. I know you have other business too in your meeting, so I don't want to take up
We
too
don't
much time.
No, do we want to pause here for the questions that came up on
Yeah.
questions? And then Deborah, then we'll do a time check on whether you want to raise some of the items on your list. But Lauren Lee,
Sure.
Nina Zabgir, and Liz Denise put hands up in that order.
Lauren?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for the presentation and updating us. It's very exciting that this work is going forward. I wanted to, if you could talk about the work you guys recently completed in the parade grounds, and if you can assess whether or how successful that flood mitigation work had been.
I would say that it's, you're talking about the paving over in front of the field house, right?
Right. And you
Yeah.
put retention tanks in there, right?
Yeah, we did a lot of leaching basins. So one of our biggest problems in that area is the fact that it does flood. We added a lot of leaching basins. One of our biggest problems. So I'm going to say it's incomplete, and I'm not willing to say it's not 100% successful or not. One of our biggest challenges has to do with the Hartrue clay courts that impact our drainage system. So the tennis courts are Hartrue. Everybody loves Hartrue. Well, older people love Hartrue because it's good on the knees. But when we get heavy rains during the summer, that clay migrates, and what it does is it migrates to our drain system, and it's clay, so it clogs the pores, if you will. So we've isolated. What we did in that design is we isolated that drain system and had its own leaching basin structure installed, and it's worked, I think, pretty well. But we're still monitoring it because we may need to do something in addition to that, because the minute that clay, if it fills up in that area, this is, me talking, we're trying to stop that from, we want to collect that clay instead of letting it migrate to other drains. So like in front of the main entrance where we get a lot of flooding. We added so many leaching basins in that area. I think we did 6 to 9 in addition, because just to step back for people who don't know, when we worked with DEP and redesigning when I did the design for the parade ground redesign starting in 1999, and we redid the entire park, one of the requirements from DEP was that we could nothing in the parade ground could connect to Caton Avenue. We couldn't tie into the city system. It's supposed to be self-contained. So we have a series of leaching basins, like 24 large ones throughout the entire fields. So the idea is it can't leave the site, which is a great idea, and it worked really well. Hartrue is causing complications in this one end because it's clay. So it's working pretty well. But I'm personally monitoring it and kind of looking at it and say, do we need to do more? Do we need to add something else? So far, so good. Heavy rains. It's still, when we're talking about having a drain, it's not draining instantly because it's a leaching system. It's not like it can just go into a sewer pipe and leave. So the idea is in a 24 to 48 hour, that water will slowly leach into the ground. That's what we were thinking as successful. And I want to make sure that it's doing that. That was probably a long answer.
Let's move on. Nina, you have a question?
Well, I guess questions and comments. First of all, I was in, trying to get home and had to go through Prospect Park when there was what was it, October 6th, 2023, and got to see the full effect of the lake overflowing. And I have it on video, and actually had to found a police officer and alerted him to the fact that cars were getting stranded in that incredible water right, by the traffic circle. Just a couple of sort of observations, and I'm wondering if they're on anyone's radar. One, going, since we've been talking about the parade ground a bit, when you come in, the whole sort of Caton Ave side, it tends to, I don't know if I would call it flooding, but it becomes pretty unpassable. That passageway that goes through, and then you've got the little refreshment building and stuff in the middle there. And a lot of water accumulates there, makes it hard to get through. And then another area, as much as I'm so appreciative that there's finally a bike lane on Parkside, but when you make that turn into the park, just two things there. One is that there's not a lot of room, sort of pedestrians sometimes are sort of standing in that bike area. It's tight, and it's just easy for there to be, even for someone as slow as I am, pedestrian bicycle conflict there, trying to make that turn into the park. And then just that section of, I don't know what you call it, like driveway, that entry, sort of Ocean Ave, Parkside entry is just in terrible shape. And I'm just wondering if there are any plans to address some of those things that I brought up. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start out at the end. Parkside Ocean Avenue is part of, that entrance is part of the Shirley Chisholm Monument restoration, as well as the Parkside Ocean Avenue perimeter sidewalk. So that whole plaza area is being redone. So you're right, that we're hoping will go into construction this summer. Well, I won't say that will be phased depending on whenever the monument is ready, because since we have to do it in phases because of parking. But I'm guessing it's going to be phase 2. So we'll do 800 feet somewhere else, and then we'll jump to this when we know exactly when the monument is ready. And we're going to redo all of that. So that's all. The pergola, the Parkside, that pergola as well, that's also out in procurement. That's being restored as well. So there's a lot going on in this area. We're spending about $25 million in that area.
Yikes.
Now I know where my donations go.
Yeah, it's not, well, it's the public dollars. It's all, yeah, it was DOT and parks and your council members and everybody, borough president. A lot of people are supporting this whole restoration. It's a really important area to be redone. It hasn't been touched since 1980s. Or 1997, a piece of it. I can't speak to the bike lane because that's DOT and how they designed that. I can't. Yeah, we don't have anything to do with that. I always hate saying those kinds of things because it feels like I'm passing it on, but it's not us, so we don't have any control. I'm curious about the Caton a little further. I understand flooding happens at Parkside Avenue because there are no catch basins from Parade Place all the way to Coney Island Avenue. There aren't any. So that gets a river of water. Where are you talking on Caton Avenue in particular?
When
Because I'm not
you
quite.
okay, when you come in, so Argyle Road, if you come
Okay.
from, where I am, and you're on Argyle Road, there's that bike lane, and then you cross over and you can go straight through, and you've got the ball fields on either side, and it's sort of like a T because you've got that wide area with the narrower walkways on the sides and then the ballparks on either side. And then if you're looking straight ahead toward Parkside Ave and Prospect Park itself, you've got the little refreshment.
Right. So
And that area, everything
floods.
rains, and then if it gets cold, it turns to ice, and it's a mess.
So if you're standing on Caton Avenue and you're looking toward that concession stand, and it's to the left, it's field 7. It's field 8, actually, is what I would call it. So it's the soccer field. And there's a catch base, there's a leaching basin there that's not functioning. I absolutely know that one. I know that it's about it's not quite midfield, but it's about midfield. And it's not the main alley path, it's the one next to the field. Is that the one you're talking about?
Actually the middle section and then both kind of narrower pathways on either side. The whole area floods up.
Yep, I'm aware of it. Absolutely. I want to make that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'd say this, it's on our list, and maybe we can get that as part of the participatory budgeting. So we can redo that one. But there's a leaching basin right there, and it's become overwhelmed. That was put in 2003, I think. So it needs to be upgraded.
Yeah, 22 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Liz, try to be brief.
Yeah, I just want to echo Nina's concern about the parade ground area. I would also note that we see it at the very south end of the reconstruction that Lauren had mentioned, where the bollards are at Caton. There's still flooding, like minor flooding there that turns into ice, which makes it difficult on biker walking there. But my main question was about the timeline for the Lakeshore project. It sounds like hopefully both phases are going to start in 2027. Is that am I hearing that correctly?
So we're working, I mean, I don't control city government. So, but right now we're in design. It's 2025. We're doing the contract document phase. So we're in the CDs. So we're doing construction documents. So we already have approval from the pretty picture design, saying we're going to build this, and everyone's approved that. And so now we're doing, how are we going to build it? We should be finished by the end of this year. And then it's 1 year. So if you figure, let's just spitball it, December 2025, done, goes into procurement. 2020, it's a year, so 2026, it's in procurement. It could be less because we've gotten a lot of attention on this and people really want us to move, but let's just say it's going to last a year. So construction would start spring of 2027 for both of them.
That's really incredible news. And I just want to, thank you for all your attention to this project. And of course, you have my full support for it. And I know that a lot of our neighbors who've been experiencing this flooding are really, really excited about that. And we'll love to hear that you're hoping for a 2027 start. So thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah, and I'll keep, obviously I talked to Sean. I will, I want this to move forward. This is very, we did Lakeshore, the LaFrec Center, that whole thing, and that was really successful. This is going to look like that edge, not with the boat landing, but it's going to, so we're doing it, but we will keep you up to date. Absolutely. Because it's important for us. And It's something I've been wanting to do. I've been, as you know, I've been there like 35 years here. I really, this is a passion for me. So want to make this succeed.
Thank you. Deborah, you got the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll do
Sorry,
my
Deborah.
best. I can also come back another time. So
Yeah, Deborah, we
whatever's-
will absolutely do that. So if you want to, point out your highest level things, and then we will have you back quickly. We can make it happen quickly.
Yeah, or no,
Before-
that's okay. Sometime in the year I'll come back again. Yeah, I can share just a quick few slides. I actually have a cold anyway, so my throat's been a little rough. But I basically have been updating the community boards around the park just on what's been going on in the park overall. I think tied to what Christian said, just to let you know how we did in the current fiscal cycle. And funding that we've received. I think now, by the time we're presenting to you, the executive budget was released for the city, and Christian may have mentioned this, but we're very excited that 12 million has been allocated for the city as part of the 10-year capital plan. So we basically have 20 million in funding right now for Lakeshore. We're still seeking more funding because Christian's master plan has lots of ideas in it. So we're actually doing a lot of lobbying on the state level right now. We're trying to see if we can get Brooklyn delegation state funding or even funding from the governor to help us reach a $30 million goal. Other projects that are underway, none like, some that are near, is that Rita Joseph has been one of our biggest champions. She's given us so much funding for the park. And this current fiscal cycle, we got more money from her to improve some of the pathways near the Lincoln Road entrance and the playground there, which is another project that was funded by the borough president that's underway right now. And also more funding. She would like to continue improving the Parkside perimeter. So she's been giving us chunks of funding to help on that account. And then, near the children's corner, there's a restroom there that's been in a very, very bad state of repair. And Councilmember Hudson has sort of taken it up as her charge and has been giving us funding piecemeal, and Councilmember Joseph also contributed to that. And then for expense funding, we don't get a lot of expense funding from the city, but our local council members do what they can. And this year, for the first time, we were excited that we received funding from the speaker towards our Reimagine Lefferts initiative, which is the work we're doing at Lefferts Historic House to completely change the interpretation. You may have heard about it, but we're shifting the focus to be focused on the enslaved Africans and the indigenous populations that existed in Flatbush before the Lefferts family or during the reign of the Lefferts family. And, we work really closely with our partners like Shauna Sabio, who's with the Flatbush African Burial Ground, and with Weeksville and a lot of the work that we do there. Parks Department budget, again, the executive budget was just restored, so it's a little bit old, but the Parks Department is still one of the few agencies that had cuts during, I guess it was like over a year ago now when Adams was cutting all the agencies because of the migrant crisis, or he said because of the migrant crisis. And the Parks Department's budget was never restored again. And it's a budget that is minuscule and has been basically underfunded for decades now. So the Alliance is working really closely with all of our partners to really advocate for the city budget to be properly funded. We actually have a goal this year of like a 95 million increase in the Parks Department's budget. And the Alliance will be hosting a legislative breakfast about this. So we'll keep the community board posted on that. And also for you to know, we have been contacted by Community Board 9 and also Community Board 17 about participating in a biennial conference for all Brooklyn parks. So that's another thing that we'll keep you posted on, but how all Brooklyn parks can kind of work together to support one another. And the idea behind the conference is really about capacity building and helping lift one another up. Other things just to update you on is, as we had told one of your members, like the Alliance, the funding that comes to the Alliance by members and donors doesn't go towards our capital program. We do the lobbying and the city gives funding for that, but it goes towards the general operations of the park. And the primary role that we play is really about natural areas care. So taking care of the park's 350 acres of natural areas, the lake, and other water bodies. And then the city's role in the park is supposed to be like the basic maintenance and trash management. But with the declining city budgets, we've been playing a larger role in both trash management and basic maintenance. So you'll see in these photos on the right, I love this one photo that Christian gave to me, which is we've been using private funding to do some infrastructure improvements like drainage, also things like barbecue areas, and I'm trying to think, Christian, what else to mention that's part of Renew, but like some basic infrastructure repairs in the park. And we're also funding a partnership with ACE New York. So we're bringing additional cleaning crews into the park to help during peak summer months. And then, we have our volunteer programs, and we launched one during the pandemic that we're still doing called Green and Go, where people can come out, help pick up trash after like busy summer weekends. And then another signature program we had that we have every year that we had last year too is our Woodlands Youth Crew, which is a youth employment program where we help to introduce youth to careers in forest conservation. And then just with our Reimagine Lefferts program, this past year we launched our first artist in residence at Lefferts, and the installation is still on view there. It's really beautiful, and we've received some amazing grants. So actually another project that'll be getting underway this year is redesigning the exterior of the house with a new interpretation and exhibitry that Christian's team will be working on. But we also received a grant to do archaeological research into the inside of the house to explore areas where we believe enslaved Africans lived. And that work is going to be getting underway this year too. And then health and wellness. Our president, Morgan Monaco, came to the Alliance from the Red Hook Initiative. And before that, she was with the de Blasio administration and really came to the park with a vision of bringing more health and wellness to the park. So we've been trying different pilots to see kind of what makes the most sense in the park. And what you'll see on the upper left-hand corner, and I actually just spoke to the folks who are doing that program today, is we've been piloting a mobile medical unit in the park. So it's a fully fitted out like health clinic, basically on wheels, that's been coming to Grand Army Plaza, but we've been talking about bringing them to the southern end of the park, whether it's Park Circle or Parkside and Ocean. And it's this one in particular is a New York Presbyterian one that's specifically focused on sexual health. But we're looking at it as a model and seeing if these types of medical units could be something that we do more in the future. At Parkside and Ocean, we also hosted this summer a summer meals truck, which was really, really successful. And we hope to bring it back each year. Over the course of the 2 months that they were in the park, they served over 15,000 meals. So that was a real boon. And then lastly, we did a pilot with the Department of Health called Open Air Care Connections, where we had trained community health workers basically mobile in the park, connecting with park visitors and asking them about their health. And it was focused a bit on mental health and well-being, but connecting people with either health services or secondary services like housing or workforce development. And that project was really, really successful. And right now we're in the process of seeking additional funding for it. And then lastly, in terms of visitor services, we had a few new food operations that opened in the park the past year. We have a seasonal cafe now at the boathouse that's operated by the company that does the catering there, and that was really successful. We also have this cute little coffee truck by Poetica Coffee, which is now operating daily from the Willink entrance, which is the entrance to the park where Lefferts and the carousel are. And then, as many of you might know, and we've gotten the word out, we are in the process of securing a new operator for the LaFrac Center at Lakeside. So we're very excited about that. We're taking a new approach now where we're going to have a full-time facilities director on site at LaFrac to really make sure that the physical plant is in good order and in good repair. And then we have 2 RFPs out. One is for the recreational aspects of the center, and the other is for the cafe. And people were encouraged to bid for one or the other. So we're literally in the process now that we had the deadline. All of the proposals have come in, and we have a committee going through the proposals. But the hope is that the new operations will start, in late spring, early summer. And that was my presentation. So
that was
tried to go quickly.
An incredible list of projects. God bless the Prospect Park Alliance.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
So I think that's it. If you don't have any questions, we've gotten a lot of information here tonight, and we thank all the presenters. I think Sally and what's her partner's name, Jackson, are And so thank you all for all the work you do for our community. You know, it's all very important, slightly overwhelming, and but we thank you immensely. So on that note, I'm going to end this meeting, and of course you're invited back to tell us more at a later date. All right.
Thank you
So
all
Thank
so
you
much.
guys
Thanks for
very much.
having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks for
everybody.
Yeah, nice
Bye,
talking
everyone.
to you all. Bye-bye.
Appreciate
Bye.
everyone.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.